Now you're going to put me into the green room, right?
No, you're in. We're live.
Okay.
We are live. And so, hi, everybody. No, you're in. We're live. There's a lot of great people in the chat here. I got to turn this down. There's a lot of great people in. Okay, hold on. Okay, sorry about that. I have so many ways of monitoring this that they were all still on when we went live. So, thank you everybody for being here. I'm here with Gerry Armstrong, as you can see, and back behind the scenes, our celebrity moderator is the Lore of DOA, and we're very, very happy to have him as backup in the chat there. And so, Gerry Armstrong is a legendary old guard critic, protester, and activist against the Church of Scientology. Probably, let's see, you're one of the most successful litigants in Scientology history. Isn't that correct?
They would say unsuccessful.
What'd you say?
The Scientologists would say unsuccessful.
Yes, of course, they would say unsuccessful, but as far as the facts go, haven't you won more cases against the Church of Scientology than anyone else?
I doubt that.
Okay.
I won one big significant case, and then they brought another 5 or 6 cases against me, all of which they would say that they won.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. So someone says that we're having an echo here. DOA, are you seeing an echo? Hearing an echo? Maybe not. We will worry about that later. So, Gerry, I have to tell you, there's a person in the chat. He's named himself Simon Bolivar, and he says this will be the first time that he's seen you in 46 years.
Wow, 46 years.
Yeah, yes. Was Simon Bolivar a friend of yours?
Oh, yeah. Me and Simon go way back. But 46 years ago is like, 1979?
It would have been 80s. Yeah. Yeah, it's 79. Correct. Yes, very good. So
okay.
Okay, good.
I look forward to seeing this person again, Simon.
Yeah, here's Dan Locke is here.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And Dan Locke says, I very much enjoyed Gerry's role in Problems of Life film, and I've always wanted to meet him. You were in the Problems of Life film?
Yeah, probably the original Problems of Life film, because after somebody blew, like myself, then they eliminated that film or cut the person out of the film.
Yeah, right. So you had to stand in then.
I believe they just reshot the whole thing.
I see. Okay, so I'm going to continue with your intro.
Okay.
So, activist, protester, critic, and litigant, highly successful litigant against the Church of Scientology, and also has continued to speak out against Scientology since he left in 1981. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, good. And so Gerry is here today. We're going to talk about, you're going to hear Gerry's story, and you're also going to hear some of the things that Gerry has plans for in the present and in the future regarding Kendrick Moxon, David Miscavige, and Scientology's tax exemption. So, Gerry, can you kind of give us an overview of your story? Like when you got involved in Scientology, where kind of some of the stuff you did, and then why on earth would you ever leave such a group as well?
Right. That's a mystery.
Okay.
I have told this story, my story. And by the way, if they're still hearing an echo, it's me, it's my echo. So there's something that's not right. I don't know if you can correct that, but it's echoing for me.
Okay, I don't see anybody talking about it anymore.
Okay. All right. So I've told this story, my history, many, many times, and I can, you know, I can relate it with different amounts of you know different levels of understanding, but I'll just sort of skim through it. So I was I'm right now in Chilliwack, British Columbia, Canada. This is where I grew up, and this is where I first heard of Scientology in 1969. And then a little while after that, also in 1969, I went down to Vancouver, where there was a franchise at that time, Scientology Little Mountain. And that's where I got into Scientology. I did some introductory courses there, communication course, HQS course, and the Dianetic auditing course, Hubbard Standard Dianetic course. And then in 1970, it became obvious to me that I could not really afford Scientology, and I was disseminated to about the Sea Org. So the beginning of 71, I flew down to Los Angeles, taking my one duffel bag with a change of clothes, and joined the Sea Org. And that was in February 71. And I was sent to the Bolivar, which was a station ship that the Sea Org had, I think in Long Beach Harbor at that time. And then I was recruited from there to Flag. So also in February 71, I flew from Los Angeles to New York to Madrid to join the flagship, and then took a train from Madrid down to Algeciras and took a ferry across to Tangier, where the Apollo was at that time.
So the Apollo was in Tangier.
Tangier, Morocco.
Morocco, thank you. And what was your first post there on the Apollo?
So my first post was a dishwasher. We had about 400 people on board, and I got the job of washing dishes for a day. And we did this crazy job without any gloves, and my hands got completely destroyed. So they sort of, I think, moved me out of the dishwashing routine, and I became the storesman. And so, I was responsible for garbage and for supplies that we got on board, moving sides of beef from the forward reefer to the galley, and that sort of thing. And then I I was then transferred from that post to the deck force, and so I was working on pinholing and painting the hull of the Apollo. And then we were in Morocco throughout that period, and we sailed from Tangier in the north to Casablanca to Safi to Agadir, and then we'd come back Agadir to Safi to Casa to Tangier. And when we came back, go ahead.
How many people were on the ship at that time?
there was about 400, and then
400 people.
and then it grew to a maximum of about 440.
I see. And so you made it up. You very quickly rose through the ranks, right?
No, no, not really. Uh, if you mean like the ranks, so we had naval ratings and ranks. So I was a swamper
Okay.
for my first couple of years, and then but my posts. So I I rose in post responsibility. I became the ship's driver. We had a Fiat 500 station wagon, and we offloaded it in the ports we went to, and then we uh, onloaded it to whenever we sailed. Sometimes we didn't onload it, and so I drove it between the ports. So I drove the port captain's office people, the purchaser. Um, I drove people who were coming and going from the ship, airport runs, and that's what I did for several months in 1971. And then the beginning of 1972, I was assigned to be the legal officer in the port captain's office. The
The
port
legal
captain,
officer in the port captain's office.
the
So
port the port captain's office was the onboard Sea Org equivalent of the guardian's office. So at that point, we did not have any guardian's office personnel on board other than Mary Sue Hubbard, who was the controller and ran the guardian's office under L. Ron Hubbard. So I became the legal officer responsible for customs and immigration and passports and getting people to and from the airport and that that sort of thing. All kinds of legal matters, contracts, the crew list, seamen's books, those sorts of things I took care of. And I was on that post for, I guess, about 2.5 years.
okay. Did you know Janice Gillum Grady?
Yes.
And who else of the CMO girls? How many of them were on there at that time?
I'd say there was a group of eight, probably eight messengers on board.
Okay.
And of course, they expanded too, as we all expanded. And then I think there were dozens
Yeah.
after they went ashore.
So
But
we've all heard for many years that they always wore hat pants. Is that correct?
well, they didn't always wear them. You know, I got married on board, and I can tell you, they didn't always wear hot pants.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
Did they run around with Elrich's ashtray and hold it under a cigarette?
oh yeah, they followed him around. They were stationed outside his door at night while he slept or was secured, and they ran his messages. So they were running messages to virtually everyone on board, and they had to duplicate not only the words but the tone that Hubbard delivered the message in. And really, they were quite accomplished at it, and were able to duplicate his tone quite well. My first significant message run on board was just after I became the legal officer, and my senior, Peter Warren, was the port captain. So the port captain's office had legal, PR, and intelligence. And I was essentially the legal office. But Peter Warren came back to the ship with this great idea of getting a whole bunch of passports. I was to take these passports to the U.S. Embassy in Lisbon, Portugal, because he had developed this PR idea and believed that he was so close to being in with the ambassador that they would simply issue us group visas and stamp passports. And of course, they refused to do this. I returned to the ship with my results of, what happened. The messengers got word of it, or Hubbard got word of it, and he sent a message down and said, "Is it true that you went into the U.S. Embassy and applied for a group of visas for crew passports?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And the messenger, who was my to-be wife, Terry, Janice's sister, so Terry Gillum and Janice Gillum. So she returned and she said, "The Commodore says you're a fucking asshole." And it kind of stuck with me for a while.
So that's kind of the flavor of working with L. Ron Hubbard there.
Yeah, that's what his language was often like. I mean, he cursed like a trooper.
A salty sea dog is how he
There you go. And there was no particular surprise to me because I'd been logging after high school. I logged for 4 years, and loggers talk like salty sea dogs. And so, and I think I got the question of, "Why did you do it?" And I said, "Oh, well, my senior, the port captain, instructed me." Off goes the messenger, Terry, and she comes back. "Oh, now you're trying to blame your senior, for your boneheaded act." So, "Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir." And life kind of carried on. But there was always that threat of message runs and threat from Hubbard. And you can see how he had supposedly resigned all of his positions of control or directorship in 1966. That was the PR line on him. However, he had absolute control of everyone on board. No one directed him. He directed everyone. And that was pretty well, everyone's relationship with him was pretty well the same as mine. There was one guy on board that you were to satisfy, and that was L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah. Well, so as time went on then, and you're in this position of basically that's OSA, legal, PR, and intelligence, right?
Correct.
So you were in the very first version of OSA, basically? On the ship?
Oh yeah. Well, the ship had been operating since 67, and they had PR and intel and legal in different configurations. I'm not sure when it became titled the Port Captain's Office, but some time between 67 and 71.
I see.
The Guardian's office, Hubbard started in 66. So,
Okay.
and the Guardian's office was land-based, the Sea Org was sea-based, and each Sea Org ship had its own port captain's office. And I think that the Sea Org land bases pretty well developed the same. Now, of course, they're OSA and they don't need a port captain's office, but probably on the free winds, they have something of an equivalent. So they would have a port captain, they would have a ship's representative or legal officer, and they had intel. But now there's no division really between the Sea Org and land-based or OSA.
Yeah.
It's all OSA. It's all the Sea Org and whoever they hire. They have lots of outside hirelings. So they have a network of lawyers, a network of private investigators, and they have outside intelligence, private investigators, and recruited intel.
Yeah. And recruited retired direct detectives from various cities, city police departments, and all kinds of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. There came a point where you came into possession of all L. Ron Hubbard's personal notes, like since he was a Boy Scout. How did that happen?
Well, I should cover a couple of years before that happened.
Okay.
Briefly. So the ship, all the crew went ashore in, I guess, 75. I think it was 75. In Florida. I was already on leave, so I returned to the base, temporary base that they had at Daytona Beach, and I was posted in Guardian's Office Intelligence. So I was the intelligence officer on board, and then I became the intelligence officer at this little base that we had. Hubbard was there. Mary Sue Hubbard was there. The CMO, Commodore's Messenger Org, they were all there. And the foreign nationals. So I'm Canadian, so I was there. Terry was Australian, so she was there. And so the foreign non-US people went to Daytona Beach, and the US flag crew went to Clearwater to set up the new flag land base at the Fort Harrison and the Clearwater Bank building. So that when we came ashore, Mary Sue Hubbard got the idea that I was a security risk. And that was because somebody had ran some ops, intel ops, harassment ops on my family while I was on the ship. It may have been people who were close to me. I don't know to this day for sure who did it. In any case, she wanted me removed from Geo Intel, and I was transferred to the L. Ron Hubbard's External Communication Bureau. And in that capacity, for a few days, I typed up, they were essentially project orders that Hubbard was originating, which had to do with setting up the flag land base. So I typed those up, and then the CMO, Hubbard's personal office, his cook and his steward and that sort of thing, we moved to a complex of apartments in Dunedin. and Dunedin is a town adjacent to Clearwater. So
Yes.
I don't know, 5 or 6 miles between them. And I was at the Dunedin operation for a few months. And then, and I was working in Hubbard's External Communication Bureau. So receiving and sending telexes, receiving and sending his dispatch traffic or his programs or compliance reports, all of that came through us, his External Communication Bureau at Dunedin. And then his cover was blown, I think, by a tailor or a barber or somebody from Clearwater. And he fled and lived for a while in Washington, D.C. until he came to a staging area in Culver City. I was sent ahead from from Dunedin to from Dunedin to Culver City to set up a a telex connection between the Guardian's office and this Culver City operation. We called it Astra. And so the communications at that point went from Astra to the GO to Scientology internationally, to the Flag Land Base, wherever Hubbard or others wanted to communicate within the Scientology network. So now it was during that time that I got in an argument with Mary Sue Hubbard's communicator, who was essentially her secretary. Mary Sue Hubbard was the controller. She ran the GO. I got in an argument with Nikki Friedman. She was the communicator. Mary Sue then deemed me a security risk, and Hubbard took over from her, and he ordered me picked up by Geo Intel, who at that point was Dick Wiegand. So this this was in, I guess, May or so, May or June of 1976. So then I was taken to the Guardian's office was set up in the Fifield Manor. Today it's the Celebrity Center, but initially, at least, it was Guardian's office. And I was locked up for, I guess, a week or 10 days on the 5th or 6th floor of that building. And then I was taken out and sent to Clearwater, along with Terry. Terry was also assigned with me into this lockup in Fifield Manor, and we were both accompanied by the GO back to Clearwater and assigned to the RPF. So that's July 1st, 1976. And
Okay.
I was in the RPF in Clearwater until December of 1977. And then I got out, and for a brief time, I did the proofread and edited Hubbard's screenplay, Revolt in the Stars.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
You helped to edit that screenplay, and it was in screenplay format?
Yes.
Okay.
And there was a novel, a book that accompanied it. And I think Hubbard, I'm not sure, he finished the screenplay, but I don't know if he finished the book. I think he turned it over to Suzette Hubbard to finish. So in any case, I spent a few days proofreading and editing these two books. The screenplay, one was the supposed novel which followed the screenplay.
Let me ask you a question. Did you ever do OT3?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Because let me just explain this for the audience. Revolt in the Stars is L. Ron Hubbard's Xenu story in screenplay format. And when I was a Scientologist, I was always told that if I was exposed to that story before I was quote unquote ready for it, which means paid for it, I would get pneumonia and die. And so was that nocebo or installed phobia around at that time while you were working on this?
Oh, absolutely, it was. And I'll jump ahead just a little bit, but in 1980 and 81, around the time I'm working on Hubbard's biography as his researcher, and I get onto the OT levels. And I think that they figured, hey, this guy has held a bunch of responsible posts. He's never blown. He's a dedicated Sea Org member. So let's just put him, let's call him, I think a Dianetics clear was the deal going around at that time. And poof, I'm on to the OT levels. And I'm just opening up my OT3 material, and I find this is it's no surprise at all. It's exactly what I was proofreading and editing. So
and Revolt in the Stars. It's exactly the same story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some years later, because the story, the OT levels, the OT3 got exposed. Somebody took off with a copy of it and, sent it to the media.
Yeah, Robin Scott, right? Robin Scott did that, right?
Well, I think he did it. I think he did it later, but in any case, I wrote a declaration with my experience and relating the same thing that you learned, that if you're exposed to this without doing all the preparations and doing it on the proper gradient, you would freewheel, you would get pneumonia, and you would die. And I didn't, obviously, and neither has anyone else who has ever read that material.
Yeah.
But so I had a very intimate relationship with OT3 and explained this to the supervisor at the time, like, I've been exposed to this. In any case, 1970, I get out of the RPF after 17 months. And then I'm transferred to the the La Quinta base. And there, Terry and I are to shoot movies with Hubbard, which I did from December 77 into, I guess, August of 78. So I held a number of movie, on set posts and acted in, I don't know, 7 or 8 of Hubbard's movies. And then I got again assigned to the RPF because Hubbard got the idea from the messengers that I was joking about his filmmaking. I wasn't, but that wasn't important. So I got assigned to the RPF, and which was then at the La Quinta base and at the what were we called? Palm Desert. In any case, one of the La Quinta, Palm Desert.
Happy Valley.
I think Happy Valley was later, but I was in the RPF until I got out. No, this is important. We in the RPF were assigned to renovate Hubbard's house at the new property, which they had just purchased, which was Gilman Hot Springs.
Okay.
So the RPF was moved before the bulk of the crew was moved to Gilman Hot Springs to renovate his house and do other RPF type jobs. So we did that, started the renos, and I was able to petition to get out of the RPF and have my RPF assignment canceled. So during that time, there was a raid threat at Gilman Hot Springs.
So, okay, hold on. A raid threat within the Church of Scientology would be the FBI is going to raid or the IRS is going to raid and go through with search warrants all over the place?
Right. In 1977, the FBI had raided Scientology's intelligence bureaus in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. So there was a constant awareness of the possibility of another raid. And Mary Sue Hubbard's legal involvement with the FBI, with Justice Department, was ongoing at the time. And the Sea Org, or the Guardian's office, was fighting the indictments or the charges at that time. So there was a threat. And right at the beginning of 1980, and at that point, I was in charge of Hubbard's household unit at the Gilman Hot Springs property. And in this raid threat, which came via the messengers, we were to cull or destroy anything which showed that Hubbard had been to the property, intended to live at the property, that he controlled Scientology, or that he controlled Scientology finances.
Right.
All of which he did. And I had a lot of material which I had to excise anything which said L. Ron Hubbard or LRH, and which referred to him, and which referred to getting orders from him or complying with orders, and what his expectations were. So, and we rented a monster paper shredder and a big truck and shredded mountains, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of paper, which in some way incriminated Hubbard. During that time, one of my juniors, Brenda Black, was the LRH gear in charge. So she was responsible for his private property, his papers, his clothes, his memorabilia, stuff that he collected over the years. And all of this was stored in a deserted, abandoned, condemned former hotel called Del Sol, Hotel Del Sol, and the top floor Hubbard occupied with his material. She brought a box of old papers to me and said, should I shred them? I looked over them and saw that these predated Dianetics, predated Scientology, so had no evidentiary value for the charges that might be brought against Hubbard. So I went with her and I collected up over time some 21 boxes of similar documents and material, which included, you mentioned his Boy Scout papers
Yeah.
and correspondence with his father and his other family members. So it was very helpful to have this material. I knew it had great collector's value and historical value, but it didn't have evidentiary value, which might incriminate Hubbard.
Right.
So I petitioned him in the beginning of 1980. I petitioned him, and he was living at that point in Dunedin. He had a small unit in Dunedin, and he approved my petition. And so, which my petition was to collect up material to form the basis of a library and a book, a museum, which now the cult has an LRH museum. So my saving these documents and other things from destruction is actually what formed the basis for the LRH museum and for contracting with an outside writer, Omar Garrison, to write a biography of Hubbard.
Right. So Omar Garrison had written a couple other books on Scientology. One was called Playing Dirty, right?
Right.
And then there was another one, and they all were favorable to Scientology, detailing the attacks. And it was all like Hubbard would have paid for such a thing, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Omar's contact through the time he was writing about Scientology was the Guardian's office. So there were a couple of people, David Gaiman,
David Gaiman, that's Neil Gaiman's father, right?
Right. Jane Kember.
Yes.
These were Omar's principal contacts for those books that he was writing and for, handling him. I became then at some point his principal contact. He, L. Ron Hubbard at that point had an entertainment lawyer, Alan Wertheimer, and he prepared a contract for Omar Garrison to write the Hubbard biography. And I was, pursuant to this contract, to deliver to Omar papers, everything that Hubbard had that might assist Omar in the biography project.
Yes.
So I met with Omar in St. Hill in 1980.
1980. So you left when?
I left the cult in December 1981.
So this is like the beginning of the end. This is like the end, the series of events that led to you leaving. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And working with Omar and being and traveling with Omar and his wife was essential for me to ultimately leave Scientology, because he would talk freely with me and I learned to talk freely with him.
Yes.
You could not talk freely with, I couldn't talk about what I was uncovering at that point. I couldn't talk to fellow Sea Org members like I could talk to Omar or his wife. He considered himself like a prince of wogs. So he learned very quickly that he had been scammed to write the pro Scientology books that he wrote. And he learned from reading Hubbard's material, which I was supplying him with. He learned that Hubbard was an incredible liar and was involved in really nasty antisocial material. But his principal focus, Omar's principal focus, was Hubbard's history, Hubbard's biography. And of course, that brought him face to face with what Scientology had said about Hubbard's history and what Hubbard had said in his lectures and in his various books, his about the author sections and his handouts about L. Ron Hubbard. And there's really quite a mass of them. And Omar was able to, distinguish what the truth was from the fiction. And that
and I can see that you're working with a writer, and I've done many projects with writers, and you really do have to talk freely. And the subject matter here is L. Ron Hubbard and his true biography, his true past, versus what the Church of Scientology. And I'll bet Omar Garrison kind of felt a little bit of pressure, right? Like he was kind of in a position where, okay, am I supposed to lie here, or must I tell the truth, right?
Oh yeah, once he knew like what he had in his hands and the serious discrepancies between what he had been told and the material that he had been given up to that point about Hubbard. Like me, he became very concerned about the safety of the materials he had. He felt that this organization that he'd written about and complimentary about the covert operations to steal documents from the US federal government and like 100 state and federal offices or agencies. So he knew like what they were capable of.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he became very concerned.
yeah.
So, and he became concerned for his safety and my safety, his wife's safety, and the documents' safety. But Scientology through this period was also publishing more statements about Hubbard. And, some of them they would label facts about L. Ron Hubbard. And Omar laughingly would say, oh, more facts.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
knew that
More facts about L. Ron Hubbard.
right,
Yeah.
more facts. Yeah. He knew that.
So this was the nature of the two of your kind of interactions while you're working on this project together, right?
Yeah.
And okay. Let me just clarify. When you were at the base in Scene, and you were accused of laughing and joking about L. Ron Hubbard, were you the first person to be a joker and degrader?
No, I don't think so. I think that it was named after, like, I've been given the information that he was somehow Wayne Marple. I don't know if you know that name.
Okay, I do. Yeah, yeah.
Wayne Marple was the original Joker and Degrader.
Okay, so but now you're with Omar, and the two of you are jokers and degraders, basically, about L. Ron Hubbard, right?
Right. There's undeniable humor to it. And thank God I never lost my sense of humor. It wasn't completely suppressed out of me.
Yeah,
And even now, you cannot help but joke against bullies. I mean, that's how do you handle bullies? Well, you laugh at them, you joke about them, you poke fun at them.
right,
And what do you do about psychopaths? What do you got left?
right. So
Joke.
here's my question. So you and Omar are joking and degrading, and you've got this thing, and you're starting to feel a little bit terrified about what might happen to you if you start telling the truth or whatever. What was the point where everything hit the fan? Like, what brought that about?
Uh, okay. During that period of time, from when I first acquired these documents, then I set up an archive. So we had a room, what? File cabinets.
File cabinets, file clerk.
That's right, I'm the file clerk. Yeah. So file cabinets and boxes filled with Hubbard's documents. And that's from the beginning of 1980 through December 12, 1981. That's my period of time on that post. And I was moved from L. Ron Hubbard's household unit, which I headed at the Gilman Hot Springs property, to the L. Ron Hubbard Personal Public Relations Office, which was headed by Laurel Sullivan, Laurel Watson, and that's another famous name, old guard kind of person. But during those almost 2 years, I had a little vehicle which I drove around, and I drove into the Midwest. I traveled to UK to the files at Worldwide, and I traveled to the SO1 unit to get files from them in Clearwater. SO1 is Standing Order Number 1, which was issued by Hubbard, in which he said that all mail addressed to me shall be received by me. And that created a bit of a flap because litigants were able to use what Hubbard said about all mail addressed to him being received by him in order to effectuate service of process
Yeah.
in getting.
So there would be the way to disturb him because he promised that it would all get to him.
Yeah,
That's
right.
hilarious. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah.
There are a lot of ironies like that in Scientology and in Hubbard's life. Even the way they dealt with me is just filled with ironies and what they're up against. They're up against a universe which is too big for them to control. And there's always these things slipping around that, they predict they want to control, they want to destroy somebody, and then it all turns around on them. And they are at the cusp of that right now.
Yes.
For example, their IRS tax exemption. So they've been living high on the hog and using it around the world. But they could easily lose that tax exemption, and then it would be worse for them than it had been prior to their getting the tax
Right.
exemption.
Way more to lose now.
Way more.
Yeah.
Yeah. The bigger they are.
Yes.
Anyway, with Omar.
Gerry, hold on just 1 second. I hate to do this to you. There's something I got to do. Keep going about Omar. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay, keep going.
At Gilman, I also had a job at the same time that I was providing documents to Omar, and that had to do with correcting lies which had been told about Hubbard in the various promotional pieces. And that was necessary because now we live, or did anyway, we lived in the age of investigative reporting, and people can dig up what the facts are. Paulette Cooper had done that, with less information than I had. And there were other people as well. And I felt we can no longer lie about Hubbard. We could no longer lie about the promises that were being made. We had to be truthful. If Scientology was to survive and was to do what it claimed, we could no longer lie. We had to be truthful. Well, that reached David Miscavige, and I had critiqued a number of pieces and sent them up lines through what was called at that time the Special Project. And those were the people who, including Miscavige, who were running Scientology at that time. Hubbard, at the beginning of 1980, had gone into real hiding. He'd escaped from Hemet, and we could not admit to having a line of communication to Hubbard because of all the attempts to serve him in criminal and civil cases. So at the same time, I was able to communicate to Hubbard, and I received communications from him. He sent me the book, which became Battlefield Earth, and to proofread and edit.
Really? So you proofread and edit Battlefield Earth?
Not the whole book, but there's an introduction, which is, my edits, my proofreads.
I didn't know that, Gerry. That's interesting.
It's a little weird because I didn't graduate from high school. So, I'm doing L. Ron Hubbard's editing and proofreading.
Hey, when you're in the Sea Org, that means you're a Thetan. You've done everything, right?
Right.
Exactly.
And
Understood.
I remember way back, like billions of years ago, where I mutinied against some asshole.
Exactly. Yeah, it came in handy, finally.
Right. Finally, have a goal. So my corrections or my critiques of what we had been saying and what we could not say made their way to Miscavige.
Okay. So Miscavige, I thought it would be Norman Starkey, but Miscavige was on post at that time. Like, was he the leader yet?
Oh yeah, under Hubbard.
Okay.
Under Hubbard.
He's 21 years old, right?
Yeah.
He's my age. 81, he he'd be 21 or
something
20.
like that. Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying about what we can say and what we can't say gets to David Miscavige.
Right. No, I routed it through the people in the special unit who were involved and to him. He then sent Starkey down,
Okay.
and Starkey did what was called a face rip. So
Those still go on today, Gerry, just to let you know.
So Starkey got in my face and was just yelling at me, screaming at me. You know, the idea is drive in their anchor points, right? You know, you got to get the guy under control, squash him, destroy him with your TRs,
crush him mentally,
right?
Ruin his self-esteem, everything. Yes,
right. And his defense is L. Ron Hubbard never said any of those things. Those were just the public relations people. They screwed everything up. I said, Norman, I have it in Hubbard's writing about him claiming to be a nuclear physicist. No, you didn't. And so I pulled a book off the shelf, opened it up, showed him, no, here it is. And Norman just went beet red and fled out of the archives area. And it wasn't long before I got a communication from the CMO at the La Quinta operation. No. I'm in LA. They're at Gilman, and I have to come to Gilman Hot Springs. And I know that it's probably to do with, what I've been saying in Norman Starkey, because I'm not completely dense. So
right.
I go there and I'm shown a dispatch, a report on me, which Starkey has written, did not copy me with the report, which is off policy.
Off policy, absolutely.
But he wanted me checked on what information, what documents I had provided to Omar Garrison. So, and that's when I wrote, a fairly lengthy report to the CMO officer and copied everybody necessary, including Miscavige, explaining what I had done, that Omar's a big boy, he needs the facts, and, we can, of course, we can spin the facts our way, but we can't lie about them. And then I listed off a number of misstatements of facts, lies that Hubbard told or we were telling about.
This is incendiary. This is like enemy line stuff, right?
Right. But at the same time, this will sort of explain. When I went to Gilman from my office at the Blue Building, when I went there, I made arrangements with Omar so that if anything happens and he does not hear from me within X number of hours, he is to call and to raise holy hell. He must see Gerry, because I knew that I'm at serious risk of being locked up, checked, and they throw away the key. No one will ever hear from me again.
Well, now you had mentioned me before, I remember, that LRH had an actual contract with Omar Garrison. So you turning over LRH's biographical materials to Omar Garrison was part of that contract. It was your job to do that legally, right?
That's correct. And that was my defense when they ultimately sued me. They omit this kind of material and just say Gerry stole the documents.
Right.
But, and they still do it right till today. Gerry left with the documents. I didn't. In the contract, I was Omar Garrison's research assistant, provided by Scientology, provided by L. Ron Hubbard. And I was to provide Omar Garrison any biographical materials that I had or he wanted, anything to help him with his biography. And that's what I did. I did it for, essentially a year and some months to him.
Yes.
I was able to purchase a copier. I made copies of documents and I put them into nice binders to help him out. I sorted materials for him. I did interviews for him. I had another fellow working with me who did interviews for Omar. And I traveled around. I interviewed his living aunt, living uncle, cousin. A lot of material, and set up other interviews for Omar to do. So interviews into the occult, what Hubbard was doing in the occult back in the 40s, and Omar and I made this arrangement where he would, if I didn't come back from Gilman, he was to make sure that they released me, and he had to ensure that I was okay.
Right.
In any case, they did check me at that point, and possibly because I'm in the middle of OT3.
Okay.
So I'm in the non-interference zone.
Yes.
So I don't know if that helped me. I mean, a sec check's a sec check, and they don't care about the non-interference zone if they've got a security risk on their hands.
Exactly. That's it. That is pretty surprising because they would never care today. Like, technical things are not a problem, especially if you're a danger to the organization, which you definitely were, even though you were just doing your job.
Right.
What's funny here also is that, just like you said, you've got reality. You've got L. Ron Hubbard's papers and all the people that he dealt with and all of the occult things. This is reality, and it doesn't fit into their little tight ideology. And it threatens the ideology. It's going to blow it up, and you're the guy who's going to blow it up, even though it's all L. Ron Hubbard's past, like his true biography.
I'm a loose cannon.
Exactly. Yes, the man who knew too much is what you are.
So I sent that dispatch, which later was important in their first lawsuit against me. And it's addressed to Cyrus Slevin, who was in charge of ethics in the CMO at that time. But I escaped the sec check and then worked very assiduously to copy as many documents as I could and get them to Omar, because I knew that if I was removed from that post or thrown off it or imprisoned, or I blew, which was entering my consciousness at that point, that they were going to turn off the faucet of documents that I was happily providing to Omar according to this contract.
Yes.
So that's when I made arrangements, and I borrowed Omar's truck. He had two vehicles. I borrowed the truck and delivered these documents, the final bit that I had, to him. And then hung around for a few minutes and talked to him, and then headed to Canada. So he was living at that point in Orange County, in Costa Mesa, California. And then while in Canada, he offered me a job. So now, before I left, I wrote a letter. I think I addressed it to Vaughn Young, but maybe somebody else. Vaughn was a Guardian's Office public relations guy, and he had assisted me a bit in the biography project, and I recommended him to take over from me. So I was doing, the required job of recruiting someone to fill your post if you're moving on.
Replace yourself. And Robert Von Young today is one of the best critics of Scientology ever. You and Robert Von Young and Stacy Young, Jesse Prince, Larry Wallersheim, Mike McClary, you guys were the guys that got me out of Scientology. And reading Robert Von Young's material also with a huge influence on me in getting out of Scientology. So Robert Von Young was going to replace you on the LRH biography project.
Right. So I wrote him a letter resigning my post from the Sea Org, resigning from Scientology. And I told him that I know what the organization can do. I hope that they don't harass me, and that I can just go away. Omar wanted me to work for him. He had a publishing company at that point, which I think he was using to publish his books on Scientology and other subjects. So he wanted me to fulfill some orders that were coming in. And plus, he was still looking to me as a knowledgeable person about L. Ron Hubbard and the documents and contacts and where to go, to bounce ideas off. So I was still involved working for Omar, but out of the organization.
I see.
My then wife, Jocelyn, and I got an apartment also in Costa Mesa. Got an apartment in Costa Mesa. Omar had moved by that time. And, occasionally, I worked for him, so we did see each other. And he gave me certain documents to copy to make safe.
Yeah.
So I did that and deposited them with a friend of his from his newspaper days for a period of time. And then not long or during that period, I was contacted. I knew that Scientology was after me. I picked up surveillance. I knew that my family and my in-laws were being contacted by OSA personnel, or in those days, Guardian's Office. And so I knew that I was a target. And a friend of mine, Jim Din Kelsey, another old guard guy who was L. Ron Hubbard medical officer, he had made contact with Mike Flynn, the lawyer who was the prime mover in all the actions, certainly in the U.S., but are also around the world, to do with Scientology. So I visited, or Flynn flew me to Tampa, and then to, I guess, Clearwater, where the famous Clearwater hearings were then being held, and he was participating in. And that's
So he flew you straight into the belly of the beast to testify against the people that were after you. At the time, they were really after you.
Yes. However, I did not testify at that time.
Okay.
But very importantly, Flynn undertook to represent me. So now I have a lawyer with whom I can communicate about things, and he begins using me for writing declarations, affidavits. And I wrote a number of them during that period. And also during that period, I went to Omar and asked him for documents that I believed I would need to defend myself. So I left Scientology in December 1981. And then, although occasionally I had some documents which Omar had a question with or wanted copied, but I did not have possession of these archival materials. So I asked him for what I needed for my own defense. He said yes. And so I took some from his home, which was at that time in Cedar City, Utah.
Okay.
And I sent a number of these documents to Flynn in Boston, Massachusetts, and to his co-counsel, who ended up representing me. This was law firm Contos and Bunch, which were in Southern California. Suburb of Los Angeles.
And what year was this?
82.
82. Okay.
82. So there was a period of months that I did not have the documents. I did not steal them as Scientology claims. And they still are making this ridiculous claim that I stole the documents. And there are critic idiots who go along. Yeah,
Dupes. Yes.
who go along with that narrative. I didn't steal the documents, and that's what the court case found. That's what the judge found. And he traced the chain of possession of those documents and the provenance of the documents, and said that I had no documents. The time period that I kept no documents myself.
So what's interesting is that Scientology continues to make this claim that you stole the documents, even though a court case investigated and under the rules of evidence determined that you had not stolen the documents.
Right. And
you think a guy like Kendrick Moxon would know about that particular ruling and yet lie and say that you still stole the documents?
Absolutely. The Scientologists universally do. But they were able to, Mike Rinder, Marty Rathbun, Lawrence Wright.
Lawrence Wright, yeah.
Lawrence Wright. Tony Ortega. Steve Kinane. They all, now Ortega has changed because, I've written over and over and over and provided people with the actual court rulings, which are substantial. So the court ruling, but they have been able to con the media and con critics and all kinds of people about Gerry Armstrong stole the documents.
Yeah.
I provided them to Omar Garrison pursuant to their own contract.
Yes. I think we cut out a little bit there. I think something's going on with my Wi-Fi. Could you make that statement one more time?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. Say that.
Just part about
you did not steal the documents.
I did not steal the documents. I provided them to Omar Garrison pursuant to the cult's own contract.
Good. Yes. And so that's good to get out, Jer, because in my experience, there has been decades of lying about you on the internet in discussion groups that are all discussing Scientology. There are these multiple accounts that continue to say that you stole the documents and all kinds of lies. So what I know that when you look at some of the stuff that's said about me, you seem to have complete understanding about the stuff that goes on with me because it went on with you, right?
Right. And pretty well the same group of individuals who form the supposed opposition to Scientology. So, it's I understood when I would see this happening to you, and I suppose, we're talking right now just because it's the same thing that happened to me, with me.
Right. And I can tell you that in talking to DOA and observing DOA and the stuff that's going on with it, do you know that even though Kendrick Moxon, he's under all of this criminal indictments that he has to fight in court, Kendrick Moxon's part of it, do you know that he's been accused of being OSA now?
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I've been accused of being OSA.
Yeah, me too.
Me too. Of working for Scientology.
Yeah.
Just because I dare to respond to the critics, to the opponents who are smearing me.
Yeah. Well, so let's get then into Mike Rinder, because this was a game that Mike Rinder would play both when he was in Scientology as the commanding officer of the Office of Special Affairs, the chief protector of the church, with you being one of the main enemies of the church. And then even after he got out, the two of you never really reconciled, and he never he never told you all the stuff that was done to you, all that kind of stuff. In your experience and with your contacts with Mike Rinder, what are your impressions about Mike Rinder?
Mike Rinder and I have a fairly lengthy relationship, and it is a psychic relationship. So I should begin by saying that 2 or 3 days after it was reported that Mike had died, he appeared to me in what it was something of a dream state, but it was completely real. And he said to me, "Gerry, can you forgive me?" And I said, "Sure." And that was it. Poof, he was gone.
Wow.
Now I've had it, you know, I've had dreams of similar nature, but that was the clearest ever. I had another dream with Mike in it, and this was in it was in Germany, and I was there for a protest, and I told Ursula Caberta about it, and I'm pretty sure that Graham Barry was there as well. I think those are the only people I told. But I had a dream that Mike Rinder appeared to me, and he was wearing a mask, and it was a Mike Rinder mask. And I took his mask off, and there was Mike Rinder underneath. It was Mike Rinder wearing a Mike Rinder mask. It was really an incredible dream. Anyway, back to this latest very short dream kind of influences what I say about Mike, because that's the thing which is the latest in my mind.
Yeah.
We go back to the Apollo. I came on board in the beginning of 71, and he came on board, I believe, in 73. So we had a period of a year or so on board together. So he knew who I was. I knew who he was. He was chosen to run an op on me when he was in OSA. This was 1984. And he was chosen because we knew each other on board the ship. And therefore, it was assumed that I was going to trust him and unload to him. And they were going to covertly and unlawfully videotape me and audio tape me while I'm talking to Rinder.
Right. So this is the Loyalist op, right?
That's right.
And it's in Griffith Park, and they are okay. So let me say a little bit from my point of view. When I first got on staff in the mission, I was sat down and shown a film of Mike Rinder and you sitting on a picnic table in Griffith Park, and Mike Rinder is basically trying to entrap you into plotting to plant illegal papers in Scientology so that the police can raid and find them. And he's trying to get you to do this. And the way the film was edited, it looked like you were actually going along with it. And it was actually your idea of how to take Scientology down. And when I was sat down in front of that, the person told me, look, there really are SPs in the world, and because of all the good we're doing, they want to destroy us. And that guy, Gerry Armstrong, is an SP. And I just went, wow. So I saw those videotapes as a propaganda tool of me as a staff member.
Right. That's exactly it. And yeah, like I was a declared SP within 2 months of my leaving. So February 1982, they declared me an SP. And that in itself, because of what they claim SPs are, that is in itself defamatory. It is the suppressive person doctrine. I have been forced, by being a target of the doctrine, to truly understand the doctrine. And I have a website, suppressiveperson.org, that people can learn all about the suppressive person doctrine.
By the
It
way,
is-
your website is one of the only websites, suppressiveperson.org, that still contains the original policies and technical bulletins about suppressive people left on the internet. I still, when I need to show them, I still end up at your website to be able to show those documents. So I really want to thank you for keeping that website up, because it's one of the few sources of information left where people can see all this stuff.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah, that's Caroline. Caroline also has Scientology-research.org, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, which is an unbelievable library of all kinds of documents about Scientology and the Church of Scientology.
yeah.
Scientology-research.org.
Thank you.
So, Mike Rinder, you're sitting in Griffith Park, and the two of you are talking, and he's trying to entrap you into doing something illegal. So, what happened with this situation?
Okay, I believe that was I may have seen Mike around, but I did not know at that point that he was an exec in OSA, but he was chosen because of this supposed history that we had together, and therefore I would trust him. So the plan with regards to this group who claimed they wanted to reform Scientology.
Yeah.
They claimed that the people running Scientology, David Miscavige, are criminal, and we want to take over. There are 35 of us, and we are called the Loyalists.
Loyal to L. Ron Hubbard.
Right, and to the text. But we want to get rid of fair game and all the spying and all the lying. And so, and what they came on to me with was, Gerry, you've got integrity. And so therefore, we want to consult with you about what to do, to reform Scientology. My main contact was Dan Sherman. Dan Sherman was a writer who, after I left and after Omar Garrison, settled with them, became the L. Ron Hubbard biographer.
Yes.
He never did write a biography for obvious reasons. There's just too many lies.
Too many lies. It's a big, hairy thing. They learned their lesson. They're never going to do it again.
So, but he still made speeches. There are speeches of Dan Sherman talking about L. Ron Hubbard's glorious past and his naval career and all kinds of things. But Dan Sherman introduced me to David Kluge. David Kluge was an OSA or GEO staff member. So I met with Kluge, and I'm a bit frustrated with these people, him, and ultimately with Rinder, because they're opping me, they're lying to me, it's a con. So I'm looking like quizzical, like what on earth, but Rinder, I kept asking, give me your best legal mind to talk to. The reason for that was that the plan to to reform Scientology or help the loyalists
Yeah.
was to file a lawsuit to put Scientology, because of its criminal activity that they knew about, into a receivership. And Rinder's job was to say, oh, we can't find anything illegal going on.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So
Yes.
I explained to him what they could use. Just the attacks on me at that point, the assaults on me, physical assaults on me at that point, because this is going down after the Los Angeles Superior Court trial in 1984. So there'd been the famous judgment, which condemned culling PC folders. It condemned fair game and exonerated me. So
this is the famous Breckenridge decision, right?
Right. Judge Breckenridge was a very famous Los Angeles jurist, very smart guy with a heart, and wasn't buffaloed by Scientology at all. He got threatened with fair game himself after the trial. And he said, essentially, bring it on. He didn't. Anyway.
Well, what happened in Rinder's only interest was getting you arrested, making you do something that was illegal so that you could be arrested and thrown in jail, right?
Correct. That's it. That's the goal. So he actually he suggested, hey, we've got some letterhead from Eugene Ingram. Gene Ingram was at that point the cult's main PI. He was their number one PI. He was the guy who was unlawfully videotaping my conversations with Mike Rinder. He was a participant in this conspiracy. And it's a criminal conspiracy that Rinder participated in to get me unlawfully prosecuted and jailed.
Yeah.
So,
and Eugene Ingram later went to prison, right?
I don't believe so.
I think on wiretapping charges or something like that.
He was he was, I don't know what his connections are into the LAPD. He's a former LAPD vice sergeant, and he was corrupt. And his, I guess, an officer, higher exec in the LAPD, said that they would never cooperate with Gene Ingram. Okay. Anyway,
all right.
Ingram and Scientology paid another corrupt LAPD officer at least $10,000, but probably more, to sign phony authorizations which allowed Ingram to videotape me. They're phony. And that was condemned, and the officer was suspended from the force. So that's how they got me on videotape. But I do not say what they say I say.
Yeah.
When I say, something about documents in files, it is write your knowledge to the loyalists. Write your knowledge of things that shouldn't be, which are putting Scientology at risk. So, violations of the law.
Right.
Write that down and make a copy. Keep a copy, but get a copy into church files. Now, that's actually what they are supposed to do according to their own policies.
Right. These would be
Right?
ethics files, basically, right?
Right. But,
Yeah.
you report up lines, dear sir, we are putting Scientology at risk by doing A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
That's exactly what every Scientologist should do.
Right.
It's nothing, there's nothing unlawful about it. I wasn't going to, if somebody wants to raid Scientology, have at it. They deserve it. It's a criminal organization.
Yeah.
They're violating people's human rights day in and day out. But I never said.
Let me tell you this. Remember I told you that I sat and watched that video, right, of them trying to entrap you? It was on ARS where Stacy Brooks said, I don't think Alanzo, I'm the one who edited that video for David Miscavige to make it look like Gerry was committing a crime. And that was to me on ARS. And that was a huge change. Like, these guys are fucking criminals, man. And I didn't know that until I was able to actually talk to you and Stacy Brooks and the others. And it really changed me around.
Now that video that you watched, that was shown to all kinds of orgs, probably all of them around the world.
Yes.
And the rich Scientologists were brought in and regged just because of the same information that was given you. Here's an SP. He's trying to destroy our religion. We need money.
Give us money and we'll go after Gerry Armstrong and all the other SPs with it.
It was reported to me that they made $50 million off that video.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
They all were duped. They were all conned. That by making me appear to be a criminal, that, people worked over this money.
We've got DOA is asking a question. What does regged mean?
Oh, it comes from the word registrar. And registrar is the person in the organization who sells auditing and sells courses. These are the money makers for the organization. So to reg someone is to get them to do a service of some kind. So to do a course,
cash.
Right? You do it for cash.
Yes.
Do a course or have some auditing, and you pay for it.
Well. So now so we have this loyalist app with Mike Rinder, and all of the stuff that occurred out of that. What other contacts did you have with Mike Rinder over the years?
Well, he has written some declarations which I have responded to, but the next one that I know of was the IRS case, and I did not know about this until 1997 when I discovered it, when I got my first internet account, and just searching around found part of the material, the documents which were submitted by Scientology to get their tax exemption. Later on, I learned from Mike Rinder that he was a principal party in preparing all the documents which were submitted to the IRS. But the next time after the meeting, the 1984 meeting that I knew of was, I guess, 1994, when I met with him in the Bay Area, and he was talking to me about black PR, or I think he said, something about dead agent. Dead agent is not black PR. And I explained to him, like he didn't need explaining, but in any case, I said, what you guys are doing is black propaganda. Dead agent is when you debunk the black propaganda, the smear. I am doing the dead agenting. You guys are the liars in this paradigm. I'm dead agenting you. You guys are black PRing me. And he said to me, yeah, and we're going to keep right on doing it until you shut up. So that was I knew, again, this is very, very serious business. And he became, well, he was by that time head of OSA. When
Yes.
he ran the op against me in Griffith Park, he was probably CO, commanding officer of OSA US. But then after that, he became CO OSA INT, International. And that's what I believe he was in 1994, when again, he was sent to handle me, and this was his handling of me.
To threaten you. Basically, we're going to keep black PRing you until you shut up.
Right.
To your face, a threat.
Right.
Was there any threat of violence or any other thing that was suggested in that meeting?
No, it's inherent in that, because the reason that we black PR you is, to degrade your image to beast level so that we can just go all the way in and obliterate you. So it serves that function. That's why they destroy people, is to then be able to justify all kinds of crimes against them. So I have been physically assaulted 6 times by Scientologists. Eugene Ingram threatened to put a bullet between my eyes. I was tempted to drive me off the road on a Southern California highway. I have very little information on all they have tried to do, but I believe that there is no limit. They consider it a point of honor. Never fear to hurt another in a just cause.
Right. To
They
the code of
all
honor.
believe,
Yeah.
they all believe that it's a just cause, Scientology, and there's no limit put on the hurt. So Hubbard didn't say, never fear to hurt another in a just cause, but don't cripple, maim, or assassinate them. No, there's no limit.
There's
So they
no
will.
limit.
They will kill. They have to stop it before they do.
I agree, Gerry. So let me say this. So then you find out in 1997, when you get your first internet account, that your name is appearing in the initial filings, in the main filings that got them tax exemption with the IRS. In what context were they talking to the IRS about you in order to get tax exemption?
Right. It probably is unlawful. It probably makes no sense. But the IRS, and they quote the IRS in this submission, and they say that the service, the IRS, has depended on the Armstrong decision. That's when Hubbard was labeled a pathological liar and he condemned fair game and PC folder culling and exonerated me. So they claim in the submission, and I only had a small part of it in 1997, but that is what motivated me to leave California and move back to Canada, which I did in I guess January, February of 1997.
And so basically you saw your name being used, you know how much money is involved here, and your very existence becomes a big problem next to all that money, right?
Right. I then knew, like, really the point that I played in this whole thing, because they filed this smear of me, smear of Michael Flynn and his other clients in 1992. And here we are in 1997, and I had no clue that there was one word about me in their filings with the IRS. It came as a total shock, but suddenly, oh, that's what this is all about. It's a $1 billion scam. And I did not know at that point that the IRS and the other elements of the US intelligence community had participated with Scientology in that scam. I thought, oh, Scientology has lied to them and defrauded them, and I've got to get away where I can be free to communicate and clear my name. But more information began to pour in, and it became very obvious to me that the federal government participated with Scientology in the grant of tax exemption, in the grant of all Scientologists being able to deduct payments that they make to Scientology, and the grant of religious status, which Scientology has used around the world, that the IRS participated in that, and that the IRS and the other elements of the US federal government, because FBI was involved and Justice Department was involved, and I have no doubt that CIA and other elements of the intelligence community were involved. Remember that the IRS pulled off the largest espionage operation in the history of the US, and they cost the US probably millions upon millions of dollars. They threatened federal employees. So the IRS and the rest of the US had a real motive to participate with Scientology, but they have to get rid of Armstrong. And how do you do that? You smear him. And this smear went all over the world. And anybody can access this material in the IRS. So only later, and only by 2014, did I know that the U.S. had participated in it. And that's in part because of an interview with Mark Rathbun by the Tampa Bay Times, in which he describes of their interaction, his interaction with the IRS, his participation with Miscavige and the IRS. Now, he was, I believe, he was Miscavige's number one bully. He was Mr. Fix-It, and that means either thump the shit out of somebody or threaten them or do something nasty. That's what Fix-It is in Scientology.
In Jesse Prince's book, Miscavige came to Jesse to say that Shelley Miscavige's mother, Flo Barnett, has given the OT levels to David Mayo, and Jesse, you need to handle this. So for a day, Jesse's trying to figure out how he's going to handle Flo Barnett, Shelley Miscavige's mother, for turning over the OT levels to a bunch of squirrels. And the next day, Miscavige, and this is in Jesse's book, the next day, Miscavige comes into Jesse and says, "Don't worry about it, Jesse. It's been turned over to Special Project L." And Jesse said, what's Special Project L? And basically later in the book, Jesse explains that Marty Rathbun had a bunch of relationships with corrupt retired detectives and all kinds of stuff. And Special Project L was this gang of people like that who took care of various things. And we all know that Flo Barnett ended up with 3 bullet wounds to her chest and 1 to her face, and the Compton PD ruled it an S word. And that was done, per Jesse's book and my understanding of it, by Special Project L.
Okay, Special Project L is a post.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but, and I'm not sure at that point who Special Project L was. I think at one point it was Norman Starkey, and then later on it probably became Rathbun. But either of them dealt with corrupt detectives, corrupt police, intelligence people, all kinds of people like that. So that was who Special Project L operated.
Well, do you think that Special Project L might have been involved in the death of Ken Auger, who was the pilot, a major squirrel who had rewritten all of the Scientology materials and the OT levels so that they couldn't come after anybody for copyright? And he was found at the bottom of his mother's pool with wire tied around his ankles and around his wrist. And the LAPD, again, ruled that an S word. Do you think Special Project L would have handled that as well?
It could be. Remember that Scientology also produces nutcases. Also produces people who are not exactly controlled by the hierarchy, but who are incited by whatever to take their own action against individuals like Auger, like me, like so. Take for example, Rex Fowler.
I was just going to say Rex. Yes.
So Rex Fowler was probably told, "Hey, you've got to take care of this because it's flapping. you've given all this money to Scientology. We're not giving it back. You've got to take care of the problem. Because what's his name? Chanchio?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cianco, or I think it's
Yeah.
Cianco, his partner that he murdered and then tried to murder himself and failed to murder himself.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if shot number 2 was fake or what the deal is. But there was a guy, an OT, who goes crazy. He has to save himself and save Scientology. Scientology's being threatened. I'm being pressured. I'm on auditing OT lines. I got to go OT8. Oh, let's kill them. Now, and there have been other people. There was a guy on ARS, not necessarily under the control of Miscavige directly, but he wrote, "Oh, you just you know where Armstrong lives. You just get a gun and you wait for him to walk by. It's as easy as that."
Handled.
And handled.
Problem handled.
Right. No, there have been crazies, Scientologist crazies, who have threatened, uh, murder or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
and there's a kind of rise. It's at the bottom, but there's a kind of rise of violent threats in anti-Scientology today too, by anti-Scientologists on other critics and squirrels. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I would. 45. Oh, Caroline mentioned R245.
Yes, R245. That's routine 245.
Right.
Yes,
And
I'm familiar.
that was how Hubbard took it. And I know that there were GO personnel who were armed. I myself had a 45 automatic inside the cult.
Oh,
And
you did?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
And then when I was leaving, I sold it, and the guy I sold it to ripped me off for part of the deal. But lots of people have weapons. Miscavige has weapons. Jesse had a weapon. There's lots of weapons inside. Hubbard had weapons. And
Yeah.
Hubbard wanted a house built, which was going to have parapets and have slots for gun emplacements, because he was afraid of civil insurrection and we were going to fight back with guns.
Yeah. Well, so, today we have a Scientology lawyer who is still operating and still going after Scientology's critics and protesters and activists. And his name is Kendrick Moxon. Now, I understand that you have had a few run-ins with Kendrick Moxon as well. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Okay, Moxon has been an attorney of record on cases against me for many years. My last interaction with Moxon was in 2020, and that's when he filed he filed a motion in Marin County Superior Court in order to extend the injunction that they have against me, or the warrants for my arrest. Scientology has successfully been able to get a series of court orders against me, which have bankrupted me, so ruined me utterly. And I'm still in, I was able to discharge that bankruptcy, but there's another one. So bankruptcy and able to get court orders jailing me and other orders fining me. So there are the $50,000 per utterance, and then there are fines, and then there are jail sentences. So Moxon in 2020, for some reason, he did not extend the warrants for my arrest on the proper date. So he was delayed. And so he filed this motion, and it was ex parte, meaning that he can do it alone. He just has to give me notice, but not enough time to respond. So I think I got whatever he was filing on a Thursday or Friday, and he set a hearing on Monday. And of course, that's in Marin County, and I'm in Chilliwack, British Columbia. But I was able to get a really good response filed in time and able to convince the judge, who stated there was a hearing which I recorded and which I have a transcript for online, and you can see what Moxon was up to. I have several times found him dishonest, like dishonest in the extreme. He knows the crummy little lies of procedural lies. Oh, yes, I filed this on such and oh, yes, Armstrong didn't notify me. Lies. He's just a liar. And you must remember that he is an unindicted co-conspirator in the criminal case, which resulted in Mary Sue Hubbard going to jail, 10 other high-level Guardian's Office personnel going convicted and sent to federal prison, and L. Ron Hubbard, an unindicted co-conspirator as well. And he was faking false handwriting exemplars. Nevertheless, he became a lawyer for the cult. He's taken my deposition, and he's creepy. And he yeah, I notice that Moxon usually gets handed the very local issues, which kind of indicates his place on the Scientology legal scale, the totem pole. They have hotshot appellate attorneys and hotshot lawyers in various places, and he gets to do the cases against picketers and protesters,
Yes.
and that sort of thing. And he's in-house, so he's a Scientologist, and
I think he's an OTA. I think I saw him holding an OTA certificate.
Could be. He acts like an OT8. Very creepy.
Yeah. Well, one good reason that we should be discussing Moxon is because we have our celebrity moderator today has actually beat Moxon in court. And he did it with a ingenious move that he did himself pro se.
Absolutely. A man after my heart.
Exactly, man.
Yeah,
So
Gerry Armstrong, per se.
I'm wondering if DOA can come up and he can tell us how he beat Kendrick Moxon in court.
Fine with me.
Yeah, let's see. I'd love to hear this. Can you get into the back end there, DOA? I've sent you a link. We're waiting. We're waiting for DOA to arrive.
He blew.
And he may not want to. We'll see. I texted it to you, DOA. There you are. There you are. He's fluffing up his hair. There he is. There he is. The
Now I know
DOA is
who
here.
he is.
Scotty Hatchester, this is Gerry Armstrong. Gerry Armstrong, Scotty Hatchester.
Hi.
Nice to meet you like this.
Nice to meet you. I reached out to you when I was at that utterly destroyed part of my life. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate the conversation that's being had because I feel like I'm in the third gen of OSA debt agenting.
Yes, you are a second gen, third gen. That's right. So we're talking about Kendrick Moxon, and I'm wondering if you can tell us how it is that you beat Kendrick Moxon in court.
But first, let me just say something while I remember. He's never going to forget how he beat Moxon. But, okay. Moxon, or every Scientology organization, franchise, entity, affiliated entity, and all of their officers, directors, assigns, employees, volunteers. It's a whole bunch of lists, plus legal counsel. All of these people are beneficiaries in the contract that the cult has with me. This is what they're attempting to enforce around the world. The beneficiaries of Moxon, they benefit. They are known, named beneficiaries of the suppression and destruction of human rights. Now, a key part of what they're doing to you has to do with taking your relatively unimportant misdemeanors or whatever and turning them into hate crimes. That's what has to be stopped. The idea that because it's a church, that therefore it's a hate crime, bullshit. And my case can be of tremendous help to you because Moxon, Miscavige, these people are all contracted to benefit from the suppression and destruction of basic human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. It is so wrong that just because this antisocial criminal cult calls itself a religion, that therefore what you do is hate speech. They are a religion, that's true, but so is Islamic State. Islamic State is a perfectly fine religion. It's a criminal organization, yes. But you get to criticize them. So does the whole of the US. It's not hate speech when you criticize a religion. You have to get into what that religion is. Now, that's the situation with the United States of America, is the refusal to discuss the nature and actions of religions, but just giving them a stamp. You're a religion, therefore, if you criticize them, it's hate speech. Hogwash. It's a hateful organization. They engage in the hate speech, and they're like Islamic State. Now, it's true that they're more sophisticated, and they use the courts, and they use fair game, rather than suicide bombers. But it's ISIS, Islamic State, is a religion, and you can tell just by their willingness to kill themselves and kill others. That's serious dedication to the cause. You're not killing people. You're not suicide bombing. You are describing, attacking a criminal organization that masquerades as a religion. Now, a criminal organization masquerading as a religion is, in America, a perfectly fine religion, because the United States of America says that all that any organization has to do is determine that they're a religion, and poof, they're a religion. Now that's corrupt, but the United States federal government is protecting this criminal organization, and they're protecting it by going after people like you and me and Alanzo.
And how do you think, I'm not asking you for any legal advice or anything, but how do you think that you would go after that it's a criminal organization? Say, like in my case, I have a criminal suit. It's allegations that it was done to a church. Do you think that there's a process of trying to expose that via like motions or
Again, you're right. I can't give you legal advice, and nothing I say should be construed as legal advice. But yeah, a lawyer, a California lawyer who knows constitutional law to some direction, can make a case. I am convinced Scientology should not be able to get away with calling a misdemeanor a hate crime. They, do you know the name Keith Henson?
I'm not familiar. No.
Well, Keith Henson was a critic of Scientology, and on ARS, Alt Religion Scientology, he posted some criticisms of the organization. He protested against them, and they got him on interference with a religion, and they're probably doing the same with you. There's no interference whatsoever. Those guys interfere in our lives, but you need a lawyer who can digest this stuff, and I offer my help, and I offer my documents, and I offer my case and the IRS case, because they get away with it because of the IRS. Oh, the IRS granted them tax exemption, and they filed 1 million documents, and the boxes stacked 30 feet high. Bullshit. It's a criminal organization. The United States federal government knew at the time that it was a criminal organization, and that case, because they depend on it, is what should be used to deny them the opportunity to prosecute people like you on those sorts of charges. Hate speech or hate charges. It's not.
Well, Gerry,
Yes.
I remember when I first told you about DOA, and I told you that he had just gotten a lawyer. That's the first thing you did. You said, give me this guy's number. I need to call him because I
Yeah.
think I can help with DOA's case.
Right. And helping people such as yourself is something that I am specifically barred from doing. $50,000, 50,000 just to talk to you and help you, suggest that I could help you in your case.
And
50
it's
grand.
there's 240 people in here, so that's 240 different fines too.
Yeah,
That's exactly right.
the 240 times 50,000. What is that? Anybody got a calculator?
Okay, Alan, you're
Yes.
going to have to, make a screenshot of how many subscribers, how many people here, because you can let Scientology know.
Yeah. I think I will. I think I will do one.
I got a question for you, Gary.
Gerry,
Gerry, sorry,
that's okay.
I keep messing it up. Alan has taken a lot of criticism for talking about auditing and saying that some auditing has some value to it. What are your thoughts on that? If you wouldn't mind, just like maybe putting a thought out there about auditing and if it's all abusive, or do you think some of it's abusive and some of it's good, or I'm just curious.
Okay, and don't forget, you have to tell us about your hearing with Moxon.
Okay, I will.
Okay, so auditing, because of the way it's used, and that is, it's used not to free people, as Scientology claims, but to control people. It's used to extort people. So the whole way in which it's used is wrong. It's destructive. They should not have the right to even record people the way they do because it's destructive. However, if you were to isolate what Scientology is actually doing when you sit down in an auditing room with an auditor, it is essentially what you do when you sit down with a psychologist or a psychiatrist. It's essentially the same thing. Now, Scientology, Hubbard claims that, oh no, we're different because we are addressing the thetan, whereas psychologists and psychiatrists, they only address the body. Hogwash. They all address the same thing. You all look into your minds to come up with an answer to the question you're asked. So, is there some therapy? Is it beneficial in answering questions that are put to you? I believe so. In the same way that, on the stand, and I have testified either in trial or deposition over 70 days. So there are some benefits which come from answering questions. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about learning to do that. Or there are benefits in learning the Scientology system, not from doing it, not from being a Scientologist. That's dangerous. But it's like learning a second language. Tremendous benefits from it. Tremendous benefit from learning about Scientology. You, in your short career, taking these idiots on, have learned about a totalitarian cult and some of that's seriously beneficial. So the same thing is true about auditing. It's like answering questions, looking into your mind. And They are simple mental exercises that we all do. And, you know, if you're paying $1,000 an hour to do it, you're going to come up with some benefit, some kind. But the danger in Scientology, I would never recommend Scientology auditing to anyone. They're keeping a record of what you say in session is used to compromise you, destroy you. They use that for intelligence purposes. You confess to doing A, B, C, and D. They say, oh no, those PC folders are sacrosanct. However, we're going to give that information to our PIs, and they're going to confirm it with the people that you're confessing about. That's criminal.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. Until they stop that completely, I would never recommend auditing in any form. I do recommend, okay, you need to talk to someone, go ahead. At the same time, I don't think that there is a ton of real progress in talk therapy. I think that there's real progress in self-therapy. Talk to yourself. Talk to what's inside you. Get down to what you're really doing, who you really are. Underneath that, you know, the Scientology facade. So I don't know if that supports what Alan was saying, but that's my take on auditing.
I appreciate it. That was there's been a lot of debate about it, and debate that it's just not a broad sweeping abuse, but when it's used to change minds and groom people, then it's all abusive. So there's just been some argue on that. And I want to talk about the Kendrick Moxon, but like what you're talking about, my story is not important right now. So I just it felt good to see other people who are considered SPs who have been fighting some of the kids of Scientology, that they felt like there was some hope because Kendrick Moxon was beat in court. And so that was a really good feeling to give that to other ex-Scientologists, because it could feel sometimes like Scientology is such a monster that it's impossible to beat. So that's what I would say. I'm gonna jump back in the chat and make sure they're doing good in there. But thank you so much for coming, and I feel so I feel like this is a historic day today with this interview. So thank you, Armstrong. This is amazing.
You're welcome, and I will say, yeah, there. I will say, it could be said that I beat Moxon on the last go around that we had. He threatened at that time in 2020 to have me extradited from Canada, but he has not done that. There's been nothing more that Scientology has done lawfully to enforce their settlement agreement or their injunctions against me. They have it now so that I am not returning to the United States, and that obviously is a big goal of theirs.
Yes.
I have determined that I'm not going to return to the United States until the federal government, one part of the federal government, it could be Congress, it could be the administration, when they invite me to the US to testify about my experiences and my knowledge. That's when I will return to the United States. I had a green card down there, so I was a legal resident, and I lost that residency when I had to return to Canada. The cult owes me for my loss of something so valuable as lawful U.S. residency. They owe me big time.
Well, so Gerry, we've got a future here where you have somehow been like the linchpin of how Scientology got over all of the obstacles that the IRS was placing in front of them in order to get their tax exemption. It's my understanding that the IRS was saying, okay, wait a minute, we've got all these court cases with Armstrong, and he has documented fully that you fair game people, you do all of these various things. We can't possibly give tax exemption to an organization that does that to people. And somehow they used you to get over that obstacle. How did they use you to do that?
Well, right. And the issue there is what's called public policy. And public policy has to do with actions in which you cannot engage, like which are essentially violations of what the public has agreed to. Largely, it's contained in criminal statutes. They violated public policy. The IRS knew they violated public policy, and because of their violations of public policy, they could not grant them tax exemption. A key case was, in the denial of tax exemption was Scientology's case against me, which went to trial in LA Superior Court. And what the IRS knew. I testified to the IRS. I testified to the FBI. So yeah, their answer to that was, Armstrong, we of the church truly believe that Armstrong is psychotic. And there were other things as well. His mind is a sordid, masochistic nightmare. Now,
so these were official statements that Mike Rinder, David Miscavige, Marty Rathbun made to the IRS about your mind being a sordid, masochistic nightmare?
Yeah.
And this was somehow what they used to get over the obstacles that the IRS was like, well, as long as Gerry's mind is a sadistic nightmare, sure, you can have tax exemption. Is that how
Yeah, there you got it. As long as Armstrong is psychotic, right?
Yeah.
We truly believe he's psychotic. For a psychotic guy, I've held it together in this conversation pretty well.
I think so. We're at 2 hours and 33 minutes. Okay. So yeah, by now your psychosis would have revealed itself, I believe.
All these years later, right? 1992, I'm, truly believe I'm psychotic, and here I am.
Right.
Without Scientology, too.
Without Scientology auditing. So basically, they lied to the IRS about you in order to get their tax exemption.
Correct.
And so that would be, I think you said it, a possible defamation per se case. Is that right?
It is defamation per se. And that's because you simply can't, in that context, official, writing submitted to the federal government.
Exactly.
You can't say Gerry Armstrong is psychotic, right?
Right.
Or
That's not,
therefore give us tax exemption.
and somehow that worked. Somehow
It
that
would,
worked. So
right?
basically, it's a very, very weak agreement that can easily be destroyed if we
Correct.
have the right attorney and the right court environment, right?
A real attorney would have a tremendous time, a great time with the facts, with the documents, and it would seriously support Scott as well.
It probably would. Yes. Yes.
So I don't know if there's any lawyer willing to take on such a job, but it would be, I guarantee, if they could grok it, it's something that a lawyer, it is career making.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be. Well, so I've seen a bunch of questions go by as we were talking, and I'm wondering if Scotty can filter through some of these and ask Gerry some of these questions. Scotty, can you do that?
Let me say one more thing on just a little more on Rinder.
Yeah.
And that is, after he became public, I have attempted many, many times. I've written him, I've made videos, essentially to get him to tell the truth about what he knows about fair game against me and the IRS matter. Rinder, his first mention of me, this was to a German filmmaker, Marcus Toots, and Rinder said, Toots asked him about Armstrong. Oh, this is sort of like Gerry Armstrong. And Rinder said, oh, Armstrong's a bit of a fruitcake. So there's the psychosis business. That's the psychotic. He's a fruitcake. And he said a number of things like that. Armstrong is seeing things at this point. That's another evidence of psychosis, seeing things. I'm not seeing things like he meant it. And he spread those sorts of things to countless people within the opposition. Aaron Smith Levin, he told, oh, Armstrong is hearing things through the air conditioner. Armstrong is crazy. Other woman emailed me, how come you don't talk to Gerry Armstrong? Well, he's crazy. And that's it. That's what he refused to engage me. It was all a facade. He never did what was really necessary to confront and deal with Scientology. It was fluff. It's unfortunate. He got Leah Remini, more fluff, refused to communicate to me. All kinds of people he influenced that way. And I became the bad guy in the opposition just because I was asking Rinder to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Here's something that can really do something valuable with the IRS to correct this crime and this wrong. He refused to.
Yeah.
Anyway,
They even did a full episode on the tax exemption, and nowhere did Mike Rinder ever say that I was one of the chief architects of the tax exemption. Nowhere did they mention that, yeah, we had all these obstacles, and the best way to get over them was to say that Gerry's crazy, and that worked. Nowhere did any of that become mentioned. In fact, I watched that episode, and at the end of it, I'm like, okay, so there's really nothing that can be done about Scientology's tax exemption per
It was
Mike Rinder and Leah Remini.
it was
And
more fluff.
yeah, it was a what do you call that? Fluff, limited hangout,
Yeah,
PR.
that's what Rinder operated throughout that time. His post Sea Org period was a limited hangout. He conspired with Mark Rathbun and probably others. They were not going to talk about the Armstrong case, other than a little bit more black PR in their respective books. And they
Yeah,
were not
right. And to dead agent you, to discredit you, to black PR you, and to make sure everybody knows that you're crazy, basically.
right. That's it.
Keeping the tax exemption working.
Right. Crazy,
Yes.
crazy, and a criminal.
Yeah. And when you're up against that and everybody's listening to Marty Rathbun and Mike Rinder, and you're trying to say, hey, you know what? They're lying about this. This is a lie. Everybody that believes Mike Rinder thinks you're the liar.
Sure.
You're Osa because you're trying to take down Mike Rinder.
Right. And he's, a lady who I knew intimately called up and wanted me to stop talking about Mike Rinder because he's the one that they're all depending on to confront Miscavige and Scientology. Hogwash.
I know it. Talk about frustration. I was beating my head against the wall for over a decade watching all this. So, Scotty, do you have a question for Gerry? Can we see a question come up here?
He blew again. Oh,
Did he blow?
I don't know.
Scotty blew?
We could do questions another time.
Ken has a lot of questions. Okay. Can you put them up on the screen, Scotty? Do you have the ability to do that? Okay. You can't put questions up. So I need to. Okay. Maybe I can. It's just that everything is going by so quickly. I can't see a question. Show on stage. Where do you think?
Question is,
this is a great question.
Where do I think Scientology is the most vulnerable?
Yes.
For two parts. IRS, the grant of tax exemption. That's where they are most vulnerable. And aligned with that is their contract with me. And that's because it is so unlawful. It is so pervasive. It is so destructive of human rights and it ties right into the IRS matter. So that's where it is. The IRS.
So the IRS tax exemption, which I've been told a number of times, back channel in the last few days, I've been told by people who supposedly know that the IRS tax exemption is the major brick wall, that they have all their defenses around, and it's just impossible. We'll never be able to do anything about that. But you're saying that's where they're most vulnerable.
Yes. And ironically, of course, it takes down their big defense.
Yeah, it does, and it gets rid of all their money, and it gets rid of their global real estate empire, and they probably won't have lawyers enough to fight any criminal indictments. And bam, they're done.
Attack it directly. It is not their defense. They can't use that defense. Oh, we got tax exemption. The IRS loves it. Yeah, but you got it unlawfully, you creeps.
Yeah, Well, now I'm not going to be able to put this one on the stage, but David B has a good question. David B is Scotty's moderator, and he's another star in this whole thing. He says, question, Gerry, when you were Black PR'd, do you know of any ex-Scientos that were involved in Black PRing you?
Yeah, sure. Lots. Many.
It mainly comes through ex-Scientologists, right?
Right. At this point, Scientology proper, or the central organization, has farmed out. I just got a cramp in my leg here. Have farmed out a lot of their fair game in Black PR. So there are certainly people inside who control it. A lot of it is done by academics these days. But, to answer the question, Rinder was an ex-Scientologist.
Supposedly.
And he Black PR'd me. Karen de la Carriere, ex-Scientologist, Black PR. I don't know if Jeffrey Augustine was ever inside, another Black PR artist.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's many. I remember this guy, like early on ARS, some guy called me the 800-pound gorilla. He's ex-Scientologist.
Who was that? Who was that, Gerry? See, that was me. Okay, just for the audience, that was actually me. Okay, when I was on ARS, I had seen Gerry in that movie, and then I'm talking to somebody on ARS. I'm still half in, half out of Scientology, and all of a sudden I see Gerry Armstrong come into the message thread, and I'm like, Gerry Armstrong, that's that SP. And so I said, oh, Gerry Armstrong has just entered my thread, my discussion, to take the 800-pound gorilla is here to take a big shit on my discussion. And you seem to handle that pretty well, Gerry, for some reason. Way to go. You had good TRs.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll tell you what, we've been doing this a while. It's 2 hours and 47 minutes. That's pretty long. Let's do one more question and then end off, okay?
Yeah, and you know what? If we want to do another one with all the questions, that would be fine too.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer everybody's questions.
All right. Well, do you have a few minutes here, or should we be ending off here?
No, you go ahead.
All right. So Simon Bolivar, the person that haven't seen you in 46 years, okay? He says this, comment, was stomach churning watching crew do all-nighter culling case folders for overts the night before a mass offloading of malcontent Sea Org members. Were you there for that?
I have I've witnessed it, but I don't think that I ever did any culling myself. I had juniors in the RPF. We haven't touched on the RPF, by the way.
We can do that on another one, Gerry.
Yeah, a total of 25 months in the RPF. And there was a lot of culling going on at that time with people who were being offloaded. But I don't think I participated in that evolution, they would say.
All right.
But they should. Maybe this gentleman, Simon Bolivar, maybe he knows me, that I was there 76, did he say 76 years ago? No,
Uh,
46,
46 years ago. 46.
46 years ago. So I can't date it, but it was a fairly common occurrence.
Yes. All right. Well, I tell you what. Let's wind this down and end it. I do believe this was an epic interview, an epic stream, as they say. So, Gerry, is there anything else you want to say before we end this session?
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Scott. We're good. We made it through.
We did, and I want to thank the DOA for being our celebrity moderator and coming up and meeting Gerry and everything. This was all awesome. I really love everybody here, except for ZDT. I saw that he was here before. so anyway, thank you very much. I'm going to end this session now.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Bye.
thanks all the audience. You know, appreciate you being here.
Yes. See you later.